This is Take a Cue, Season 2, Episode 9.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Season 2 of Take a Cue. I'm Jen Wise, 4th and 5th grade instrumental music teacher.
And I'm Erik Donough, 8th grade band and jazz band director.
We are two veteran educators with over 35 years of experience teaching music in New Jersey public schools between the two of us, and we're excited to bring teaching experiences and insights to you.
I'm super excited, especially for Flute Day.
Hey!
Whether you're just starting out your teaching career or you've been teaching longer than we have, this show will help you grow with new ideas and perspectives about music education and teaching.
We hope you'll be just as inspired as we are every time you listen. Before we begin, if you enjoy our podcast, please help us out by doing a few super easy things.
First, subscribe on your favorite podcast app.
Then make sure you rate the podcast and leave a review.
It helps people find our show who haven't yet, and we really appreciate it.
If you find that you get a lot out of our episodes, we'd be grateful if you considered becoming a monthly supporter to help us grow the podcast.
You can sign up to make a secure monthly payment using the link in our show notes or on our Spotify for Podcasters site.
Also, if you have questions or comments about anything you hear on the episode, come and interact with us on social media. We're Take a Cue Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And YouTube.
On YouTube.
It's Flute Day.
Oh, Flute Day. I'm excited.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the flute. Beginner flutes. Oh, man.
Jen, I'm really excited about this, not only because I'm excited to learn about how to teach flute to beginners. I'm excited to learn about all the things that I'm doing wrong with my 8th graders. So, believe it or not, as a woodwind player, I still am mystified at how to teach the flute. I get a pretty good sound myself. I can know how to vibrato in some fashion. And I can play notes. But when it comes to actually teaching the basics of like embouchure and all that stuff, I'm really looking forward to learning a lot from you today.
Oh, good. And yeah, I confessed this maybe in earlier episodes, but I have flutes that don't get a sound until December, January. I was not one of those flutes. I definitely got a sound in the first lesson and just kind of ran with it. So
nice.
So I had to learn how to teach embouchure, right? So I've got a few tips and tricks for us today, and yeah, excited to share. We've got a lot to do and a lot to talk about. So
great.
So yeah, let's dive in.
So this is all Jen's show. I'm excited to learn how to teach my flutes better.
For me, for my first year players, a lot of it's on me with the preparation. And I've talked about some of these things in previous episodes, but specifically for my flutes, I make sure that everything is unwrapped. The plastic is off. So if the instruments got delivered, I look them over, I check them out, I take off all the plastic, throw it out. But I also ask them if they had a family instrument or got their flute elsewhere. I have them drop it off in my room before our first lesson, and I'll look it over also just to make sure there's no weirdness going on and that it's actually a C flute, because that happens sometimes. Or it's not some like crazy flute from a different culture that it just isn't going to work with standard of excellence. So because that's happened to me before also, kids showing up with different types of flutes, because a flute, you need a C flute, right? So so after I've kind of looked them over, I prep my room a little bit. I like to have, for all my beginner lessons, like a 6-foot folding table in the room for the first couple lessons. And I have them like kind of gather around the table to do our first lessons. So like we're standing for part of the time and we're sitting for part of the time. So if I have a lesson group of 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, depending on the year, we gather around the table to do the first step. So just so everybody has a good view, everybody can kind of see what's going on, and I feel like I can get to them easier. I can, instead of like going to each kid, and like if I have 8 flutes in a class, that's like 10 feet you have to cross that you have to get to. So I like being able to like just reach across the table and just help them, if they're way off. So I'll have a good 6-foot folding table set up in the room, and then I'll have a place for them to sit, because we'll end up sitting partway through the lesson, not just because they complain, but because, we, we should sit and look at some notes and everything. So, and, today, like beyond the prep, I want to talk about assembly. I want to talk about first sounds. I want to talk about tonguing, how we get their fingers on the instrument, and, what and how to practice after the first lesson. So, I also, before we start, I sticker their flute if it's in the room. I will put stickers on the keys that we use. The other thing I do is because I'm really big on right hand position for supporting the flute, I'll also put a sticker where the right thumb goes. So we'll talk about that when we talk about putting our fingers on the flute. But I do put stickers on ahead of time because I think it's important. I used to say, okay, do you want stickers on your flute on the keys that you use or on the keys that you don't use? And some of them just would look at me with blank stares. And I'm like, okay, you need them on the keys that you use, all of the keys. You're going to get as many stickers as I have. I will put them on your flute if they don't, answer right away. But then some of the flutes have been coming with like the pointed arms, and that's been kind of nice. So, those kids end up like taking the stickers off pretty quickly because there's already those pointed arms, Y arms on the keys that you don't use. So like the second key on the left hand, there's already something there that says, hey, that's sharp, don't put your finger on it, so that's been kind of good. But now that I teach fourth graders, I sticker them all, and I just tell them, well, if you don't need it, take it off. But today you have stickers, and so that's that. So I do that before the first lesson as well.
That thumb placement is so important. I'm really glad that you said that too. And I've had people that use like Band-Aids.
Okay, that works.
And they'll say like, okay, where they'll put the little like the little cushion.
Yeah.
Where the thumb is supposed to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know.
I get that because it's like it's got to be there, right? So if you're not sure where the thumb's supposed to be, I'm kind of like doing this to show you because I do that for my kids if I don't have my flute in my hand. But it should live that sticker. Oh, here's my flute. Should have shined it up. Sorry, guys. But see this trill key right here, that first trill key, we want a nice triangle right here. So I make sure we can really see that triangle happening, and that's where that thumb should be. And if it's anywhere else, if it's here, we're too crunched, right? And we're never going to we're going to bump the trill keys and everything. And if it's here, it's like, whoa, I've got no chance, right? Worse, if it's here, some of them, their fingers are teeny tiny. And if they put their flute in the crook of their thumb, they can still kind of sort of get the keys. But then, I show them very, very quickly, like really in this first lesson, like, okay, well, if my big giant adult hands are there, like, look what my fingers look like, and I can't even reach the keys, like I can't even crunch them up that much.
That's creating so much tension in the hand.
Right. So I don't just put stickers on the keys before they get their flute. I put them here, and some of them will even need it on the side of the first finger. I don't give that to everybody because a lot of them just naturally their left hand will just kind of fall here. But sometimes I'll put another sticker here for that contact point, or mark the side of their hand when we get to that spot that we need a little contact there. So a gaggle of flutes comes in to your classroom. What do? Right? They gather around the table, and I have them all put their flutes on the table, and we look around and we look at the top of the case and we say, okay, you need to put your flute with the latches facing you, right? And then we need to figure out which side of the case is up. If it's not very obvious, because if like say they have a flute that's been passed down the family, they replace the case, and some of those cases are pretty anonymous, the top and bottom. We'll put a sticker on the top side, or we'll put some kind of marking there, just real quick. I'll have like a roll of tape and I'll go, boop, that's the top, or I'll have a sticker and we'll, make sure we know where the top is. And then we'll all kind of have that reveal moment where we open the case and we're like, oh, yay, look at that, our shiny flutes. Okay. We don't take everything out right away. We just kind of look around the case and we say, okay, at the end of the lesson, This is where everything needs to belong again. So take like a mental snapshot of the case so everything's lined up in there. And then it's going to all go back there in the same place when we're done. So take a good picture of it. Click. Okay, there it is. And then we name the parts of the flute. Because I say, like, today I'm going to be referring to the head joint. Which one's the head joint, the foot joint, the body of the flute? And, and that we talk about that. And now while we're standing there, I have them make their first sounds on the head joint when we're standing up before we move to our seats. Why? Again, because I can look just around the circle. I can help people. I can rotate their head joint a little bit. I can reach across the table and help them. And I find that really efficient. So yeah, I have them take out the head joint and we look at it and we say, okay, like if I said to you the tube goes to the right, most of them, they'll put the tube to the right and they'll have the correct side facing their face. But I have them look at the lip plate and say, okay, do you see how your lip plate, it's called the lip plate because that's what's going to go against your lip. The lip plate has a wider side and a thinner side, and the wider side needs to face you and go against your lip, right? And that has to be said because a lot of kids will go home and forget. And they'll come back the next week, if we only have time to get sounds out of the head joint, they'll come back with the head joint facing the wrong way and say, I can get a better sound this way. It's, well, yeah, okay, that's because you created this crazy pinched embouchure because you have the the head joint facing the wrong way. We find that wider side of the lip plate and have it face that way. So, and then to get the first sound, because I do believe in a very relaxed embouchure, right? And I know everybody says, oh, you should be relaxed when you play. You should have this relaxed thing. But, with a flute embouchure, like and I don't say this to kids, but if I could, I'd be like, smash it against your bottom lip and put some air across it. And you're going to get the best sound because that's the shape that you create, that sounds absolutely insane. But the less I say in the beginning, the better their sound is going to be. The only thing we really truly need to know is that it's in the center of your lip, so that the air goes evenly across the hole.
I was going to ask Jen. I definitely have had a couple kids in the past who, whatever their physiology, they tend to make the hole off center. Mm-hmm. And they still get an okay sound, like they're not having problems. Is that okay, or do you try to like fix that?
I will try and move it to the center. If they're starting with me, they're not going to start on the side, and I'm going to really try to get them to not drift to the side. Because as we refine our sound in the upper register and especially the lower register, that can cause some problem. Because most lip plates are symmetrical, right? Like most and if you're doing something offset a little bit, what you're putting into the flute is not symmetrical, right? So physics says you're probably not going to get you're not going to have as much versatility in your sound as if you were in the center of your lip. So first I'll have them kind of like feel that little place right here where your lip meets your not lip. I don't want to say your chin because kids find their chin way down here, right? But where your lips meets the rest of your lower face. and then I have them actually look at the lip plate and find the center of the hole, and I say, okay, see that little straight line right there? You're going to kind of sort of place it right there and then gently settle it into the curve in your chin, right? And everybody's little curve here is different. So when it settles in, some kids are going to go like this, and some are going to go like this, and some are going to go like this, And and I hope you're all watching on YouTube today. I don't know if we emphasized that enough when we started, but especially for the flute, I'm going to talk a lot about using a mirror, and you really want to see what's going on here so that you can help your kids imitate that. So we find that spot right here, we match it to the straight line here, and then we kind of settle it in, and I will I'll say to them, okay, so let's put some air across the hole and see what comes out. And they go, and they get this very wispy sound. They're not using enough air, and I'll say, no, like you're blowing out a birthday candle, like think big bad wolf, huff puff, blow that house down, and then they start to get something out of it. And if they're not really finding that spot, I know this is a little bit controversial, the whole like kiss and roll technique. You find the center of your lip, you roll it out. That doesn't always allow the lip plate to go low enough on your lip. Okay, so if they're really struggling with finding the center, if they're really, really struggling, we'll try kiss and roll. We'll try and make that happen. Most fifth graders, especially because my flute groups tend to be 50-50 boys and girls. They don't want to hear kiss anything. So when they're 9. So I tend to not use kiss and roll anymore. But so we go in the center, we find that spot, we blow across, and I don't really talk too much about pulling the corners like down and back unless they're like, and really making a big smile. I don't really talk about that because again, the best flute embouchure is if you kind of just keep your lips relaxed, place your lip plate there and blow across. I don't guide them much more. I know some teachers talk about focusing the air over the hole. I rarely say focus over the hole because I think that creates tension and a smile and a thinness in your lips that just doesn't benefit having your good sound. So I have them use a mirror right away. I buy those like jewelry counter mirrors that sit on the jewelry counter and I flip them over. I think we've talked about this in previous episodes, but I flip them over the stand so that they can see themselves, right? And as we're standing there around the table, we'll blow across and then we'll find that sound. And once everybody gets something, I'll have them start tugging. Because for some of them, the velocity of air is the thing that's missing. And I'll have them start with to, T-O or T-U. I don't really do T or te or anything like that. To is usually enough. And then I'll say, take away your voice. And you get, and I'll have them do that without the flute. So I'll have them echo me back and forth without the flute. And then I'll have them find that place on their lip and make that sound starting with the T sound. And we'll do that for a few minutes. We'll talk. I'll show them how to, cover the end of the flute to create a little more resistance. Because, unlike the other instruments, the flute doesn't have that resistance. You don't have that like pushback from, the reed or the buzzing into the mouthpiece or anything. So, sometimes we'll create a little resistance by covering the end. And that kind of helps. Questions so far?
I guess the only question that I have is what do you do when you do all this and you have a kid who still isn't getting a sound out? What do you find are like the go-to issues and fixes?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the mirror is king because, often like it looks like in the center, but they have no like vapor trail, like it's not fogging up on the back of their mouthpiece, and it really should be kind of creating like a very clear V in the center if their air's really focused over the lip plate. So it's probably too much spread. Also, I'll tilt my chin up a little bit and I'll be like, okay guys, like see how my lips look like an almond, and if I make it look like a Cheerio, listen to how it changes. Do you hear that in your sound? If I make it too closed, listen to how it changes. Do you hear that in your sound? So like if I tilt my chin up and you can see this, it kind of looks like a very thin, like maybe an almond cut in half. That's the shape we want. But sometimes they'll come at it like, and it's wispy and it misses the hole and it's too much of an O shape rather than a two shape. So we'll look for that. The other thing is sometimes they're not pressing the lip plate firmly enough against their bottom lip. So like I said, if I could say to a kid, smash it against your bottom lip and go, like, well, it's because they're just not pressing firmly enough. So I'll have them be like, listen, like try and pull it away from my bottom lip, and you can't pull it away from my bottom lip, and they'll be like like just gently putting it there, and that's not enough pressure, right, to keep it stuck to your lip and focused over the center. So those are big things. And then we have to revisit the pressure against the bottom lip. We have to revisit that once we start fingers, right? Because when you go for the note C, all of a sudden you don't have your left thumb for support. It just wants to just slip off, right? It just wants to slip off your lip. And we have to find that pressure point against the pointer finger on your left hand to help press it against your bottom lip still.
Is there a particular pitch that should be coming out of the head joint, or is that just kind of like either you're getting it or you're not?
At this point, it's like you're getting it or you're not, right?
Gotcha. Like we were talking about saxophone embouchure on the episode, and we were talking about how much, are you biting too much? Are you biting not enough? Mm-hmm. Kind of things like that. But on the flute, it's pretty much plays the right pitch or not at all.
Yeah, you're pretty close to the right pitch, and you can tell, like, if you're playing, and then someone's got a sound that's like this, they're too far rolled in, right? The flatness is coming because it's rolling towards them too much. They're covering too much of the hole. And then if you've got this as the pitch you want, then they're rolling out too much. But you can see those things before you hear it, right? If you look at me and then look at where the hole is, way too far exposed, way too covered. I want to also say, like, the other reason I like the table thing is because when we're seated in just like a semicircle in the classroom, like we do every week, right? You don't always get to see your students from the side. And I feel like in these first lessons, especially for flute, looking at them from the side, making sure they're making that connection with the bottom lip against the lip plate. You could really see the shape of what, the aperture from the side. You can see more from the side, and you can more quickly diagnose what's going on to help them get that first sound. Whether they go home and practice it that way, that's a whole other thing. But I can't tell you how many times I say, take a peek in a mirror, look in the mirror in the first lesson, because that's the only way to get that sound to work if it doesn't naturally just fall in the right spot. When you're ready to put the flute together, since they're already holding the head joint, I have them put that on first. But I have them take it out of the case, and I say, hold it where there are no keys, right? So right here at the top of the flute, they're holding it, here where there are no keys. And then I say, twist and push it in. And this is one of those moments where I'm like, I want you will do everything today, but I need you to watch me first, because I can show them once and they can all do it, and there's no variation if I show them once. If I say what to do, then there are variations always. But if I show them and say them and then say, okay, it's your turn, and then I say, okay, let's do that again and check your neighbor, then they'll do it right every time. But if I just tell them, it's not enough. So I tell them, as tempting as it is, don't do this with me. Watch me do it. So, and then I just have them line the hole up with the first key on the body. And, we might stray from that a little bit as we go, but that's pretty much standard for everybody. Some of them come with an arrow. Some of them do not, for where it's supposed to line up. I tell them to look down the flute a little bit if you need to kind of like really make sure you're lined up if you're not sure. I do ask them to leave about the width of a paper clip of head joint showing, because we all know, as our flute players tend to use more air, they get crazy sharp and they're like, they don't know why and what's going on. And so I just have them set it up there from the beginning. And then on the foot joint, I always like show them like this, right? I'll say, okay, grab it where there are no keys, twist and push your foot joint onto the other side. And I'll be like, doesn't that look like it makes sense? I'll line up the rod and I'll be like, doesn't it look like you should line it up like that? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, but you don't. And then, and then we show them, where it should live. And I say this rod directly through the center of the last key. Some people have it pushed slightly away, and you could totally do that if you have longer fingers fingers. I have normal sized adult fingers, and on my professional flute, you can see I have an angled pinky cluster that goes towards the flute. I don't see any reason to stretch any further than you need to, especially again to support that right hand position. I think it's really, I think the bar should be through the center of the last key. Like we said, fight me on social media, but that's where I think we should start. So that's where I put them. So now I have them go to their seats where they have a music stand waiting. And then we make a sound. I don't tell them anything about where the fingers are, but I have them sit down and look at the lip plate and find which way the tube should go, right? Find which way the instrument should go, and that the wide side should go against their lip. And they bring it up and make a sound on the whole flute. Yeah. Without putting any fingers on. And some of them are pretty successful, and some of them are like, whoa, there's like a whole instrument over here, and that's kind of a good moment for everybody. And then we start to put some fingers on. So since they already have the stickers, it's not too difficult, but I tell them like, okay, I always set my fingers up from top to bottom. I set the fingers up closest to the lip plate, closest to my face. I set those up first. And so I'll show them, where the left thumb goes, first, second, third fingers, and I'll have them just kind of place their fingers on the flute where the stickers are. And then, lift up your pointer finger and pinky to play D, because Standard of Excellence starts D, C, B flat. I like B, A, G, but like I said, I'm really big on the right hand position, and I find that their right hand position is just whack if they don't start on D. So
that's interesting. Do a lot of like flute only methods start on D as well?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, they just don't. I don't think they do. I think they start BAG. I think most of them start BAG. I really like to actually start on F because the velocity of air is there. It's mostly in tune on most beginner instruments, and you have something going on the right hand. And it's really easy to go F to B flat, right? So it's really easy to come up with some cute tunes that go sol do. Like I like that.
Okay, sure.
So, if I could, go back and do it all again and write a flute method book, I'd probably start F, maybe F, G, A, F, G, A, B flat, and then work my way down, E flat, D, C, B flat. So,
gotcha.
But anyway, the Standard of Excellence starts D, and I'm okay with it because again, I'm really big on finding that triangle with the right hand, and I do feel like if your thumb is here, these fingers will just kind of relax into place, and if they don't, I have them shake out their hand, place those fingers, and add the thumb, and I have them do it both ways because some of them will create tension by going like this and some of them will create tension by going like this, right? So I have them do it both ways and say, okay, thumb here, relax these fingers down, and then I'll have them put these fingers down and then add the thumb, and I don't always involve the pinky right, when I do that, because again, I'm starting them on D just so they can grip the flute, they can get a good grip to put it against their lips. So, so we tried D together, not always successful. And I say right off the bat, like, whatever you do, don't take your fingers off the flute until I tell you to, because, I feel like I struggled my first couple of years, like, oh gosh, I have to reset their fingers again. Even if they have stickers on it. And so I just said, I will give you a break for your fingers, but you can't take your fingers off D or the vicinity of D until I tell you to. You have to leave your fingers there. You're training your fingers. That's what we're here to do. We're training your fingers to go to the right spot. And we just don't have time to reset 8 of you with your fingers 3 times in this lesson. You just have to leave them there. So I show them where D is, and then I show them the fingering chart. And then I show them C, and I ask them if they could figure out how to make C happen with their fingers without me telling them. And most of them can do it. And then I show them B, and I ask them to do the same thing. And a 30-minute lesson is over. So
I really like that, though, that you have them read the fingering chart right off the bat. That's something that I really haven't done when I've taught beginners. But no, that's really good because then they can go and reference it when they're at home during the week and they know what that means.
Yeah, yeah. And, so I'll tell them at the end of the first lesson, like, listen, I want you coming back making a great sound on the head joint only. Like, you need to come back finding the center of the hole, not doing anything weird with puffing your cheeks or playing your flute upside down. Like, I need you to come back making a great sound on the head joint, right? But you have the stickers on your flute. You kind of sort of know how this fingering chart works. If you're feeling ready to get your fingers together and get them on there, great. Like, I do want you assembling your flute and disassembling your flute. I do want you putting the whole thing together, but come back making a great sound on the head joint. My flutes get a lot of leeway, not just because I'm a flute player. I feel like if you talk to anybody, your flutes are a lesson or two behind, but they get a lot of leeway because they're one of the instruments that, like, you can't see your fingers happening, right? They're just way over here, and you're crossing the midline to make that happen, and it's very not natural. No. It takes a while. So, but if they can go home after that first lesson and they feel like putting their fingers on the flute, more power to them. So, but for them to play D to C to B flat, it takes a while. So, so what I do a lot of is like echoing exercises. We'll choose 2 notes and make that our assignment for the week. I'm going to change between D and C this week. That's my goal. Okay, I'm going to make that finger change fairly smooth, and I'm going to try and do that. Other things I'll do with them to really, get their fingers moving on the flute. I kind of have like a 3 or 4 step process for like making a passage happen. So, like, say we're working on hot cross buns, right? We'll say the notes, we'll look at it, we'll make sure we know, like, okay, D, C, B flat, no problem. We got it. We're reading the notes. We know what we're about to play. And then I'll force them to stare at their fingers and make them change. So like actually looking at their fingers, because some of them think they're doing it and they're not. They think they're pushing the keys down all the way and they're not, right? So I'll make them stare at their fingers and do it like 2 or 3 times. And then I'll have them do it like over here, but still saying the notes to themselves and just not looking and going D, C, B flat. So I also have my flutes do a freeze and check at the end of like everything. So we'll go D and C. I might stop them like mid sequence of notes and say, okay, we just went D to C, freeze and check. And they know that just means pull it away so you can look, check your fingers, reset them, and put it right back. It's kind of like check and adjust with marching band, like, or what check and adjust should be anyway.
Now, I'm curious, as you're starting to do like fingerings and making sure everybody's doing the right thing and you're modeling everything, it's mirror image for them. Like, no other instrument is doing it like you are on flute, because everybody else is midline and you're off to the side. So how do you deal with the fact that they're backwards from you?
Yeah, it's weird. I do turn around a lot. And I turn around a lot because then I'll say like up and over. My right hand's going up and over. My right hand's going over the flute. Like, I don't know how many other ways to say it, but like I will turn around a lot. I'll instead of talking like left hand and right hand or this side or that side, I'll say top hand a lot, even though like it's not on the top like a clarinet, but I like, it kind of still makes sense to them. Your top hand is closest to you, right? I don't know why that still makes sense, but I'll say top hand instead of, because left and right, I don't know, doesn't always click. And heck, I make a mistake once in a while. If I'm looking at them, I'll be like, your left hand. Oh, wait, I'm looking at you. So that's your right hand. So, yeah,
I end up turning around a lot too when I'm teaching flutists, when we're working in third register fingerings and things like that. And sometimes I'll just hold it up and down like a clarinet. So I'll just say, okay, it's this, like, so they see that, and somehow they can translate that into the fingering on the side.
To this. Well,
but when I play it on one side and they're doing the other, their fingering, like, they don't know what to do with their hands. It's wild.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's why I always tell them, like, I build my fingerings from left to right, from top to bottom, right? And then they look at the fingering chart, and the fingering charts are written like you read, right? They're written left to right. So that's what I tell them to do. I say, because, we're building your fingering. So like for D, on your left hand, on your top hand, thumb, 2, 3. And then I freeze for a second. I say, okay, right hand, 1, 2. After I like make them stare at their fingers, I have them do it up here, and then I have them play it. And we actually write down like that's how they're going to practice at home. Like, we all know teaching kids how to practice is really the thing, right? Because if they know how to practice, like, they're more likely to practice, and they're more likely to find success when they're practicing at home. And, and that perpetuates itself. But so that's one of those flute practice techniques. The other thing I do is I give them switch time. So like, say we're playing our 5-note scale. Say, okay, guys, today we're going to play 4 quarter notes on each note of our 5-note scale. We're going to leave 4 beats of rest in between each note to switch. And then the following week, I'll say, okay, you get 2 beats of rest. And the week after, 1 beat of rest, and buckle up next week, no switch time. And I'll kind of take that away little by little. And I think it does work. Like, I think they're pretty much ready to take away that extra time when I let them take it away. Whether they're practicing it that way or not, I don't know. But I think it makes them feel a little bit successful, like they are progressing. If I give them 4 beats, and then the next week a little less, and then all of a sudden, hopefully they can just kind of switch. So I don't know if that is actually working for them, or it just makes them feel like it's working for them. So
that's a lot to go through on day one.
So I know. So the switch time thing is like lesson,
sure,
really 3 and 4, but no, I go hard in the first lesson. We do assemble the whole thing. We get our fingers on the instrument. We look at a fingering chart. And then the next,
the kids, I'm sorry to interrupt. The kids want to play. Mm-hmm. It's definitely no fun to go home and be like, what'd you learn in your first lesson? I learned the head joint.
All right.
And I could play one note.
I know. It's like, here I go. And then,
that's it. That's all I can do.
Right. That's it. I know. And then I do find that if they don't have anything else to try, they will come back with weird stuff going on, because all they did was go
yep
for an entire week. And it's like, well, you just did a whole week and you forgot about that whole tonguing thing we talked about. Remember that when we went 2, 2, 2 instead of just who. So they'll come back like doing weird stuff if I don't give them something else to think about in that first week. So yeah, I know it's a lot. It is a lot. And I know there are teachers out there that send them home with the head joint and send them home tonguing and say to swab out your flute and take care of your flute. I don't know, talk more about the one thing. But for me, I know they want to play. I know they want to come back playing something the next week. And at the very least, they'll come back knowing that, like, it's going to take a bit, right? And that we're going to do it together, and
sure.
So,
but they've actually played their instrument and maybe played a few notes, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So when they're done playing, how do we put our instruments away?
Yeah, like I talk a lot, about, again, holding it where there are no keys. We gently twist and pull apart, the instrument again, put it back in the case. I don't always talk about swabbing the flute in the first or even second lesson. We just don't always have time. And sometimes they don't always come with a cleaning cloth, so I have to wait for them to get one, right? So I'll send out the email that's like, okay, your kid's been playing a lot and they need to learn how to clean their flute, and here it is. And for a little while we weren't doing that because of COVID stuff and whatever. So, but now that it's back, I have, videos on YouTube about how to do that on my Schoology page, and that helps too. So, I send them home with, the 3 notes written out pretty clearly on a fingering chart. I send them home with hot cross buns and Mary Had a Little Lamb using those 3 notes. No music staff yet. We're not anywhere near reading at this point. We're barely getting a sound. So, just, focusing on the air, the embouchure, the fingers. And then I have just a couple just random videos on my my Schoology page, like about how to, reviewing how to get the first sound. But the other thing I have is like not just pictures of the fingering, but pictures of like someone's hands on the flute. So like this, it's just like a JPEG image. This is D, and then a picture of D from their perspective as if they're looking at the flute down in their lap, right, with like human fingers on the flute. So I find those have been really helpful to have at home to look at, because it's just another visual for how to get your fingers on the flute. So that's on there as well. Every once in a while you run into a student that just like can't reach that far, that is like sincerely struggling to reach the third finger on the left hand, or I have a curved head joint, and I give it out when I need to, and I have it like just in a separate little case that they can try it and take it with them, and usually in the first year they'll grow out of that, but I'll lend it to a kid if I need it. So I just want to suggest to you guys, if you see a curved head joint out there in the wild, just grab it. They're not that expensive. Keep it on your shelf for when you end up having that kid that's just can't reach the keys. That it makes them feel pretty good that like one day they're gonna be able to do it, yeah.
Jen, do you have any resources for students or teachers where they can sort of look at some of this or get some tips and tricks?
I really like the Trevor Y series for flutes, and there are a couple like beginning books now in the Trevor Y series that are very good for building sound and developing tone on the flute. And your local like flute society is always a good resource for private teachers and everything. There's I don't know. There's always on YouTube. There's always like one thing I have like an issue with, so I shouldn't shut everybody out, because again, some of the stuff I have to say is pretty, it's kind of out there too. But Flute World is a good place to go. There's lots of resources on there, and the one thing I want to say, don't get the Bo Pep. It kind of locks you in. I don't know if you've ever seen those. It's like the
thumb thing, right?
The thumb thing that clips onto your flute. It's really hard to place in the right spot.
Okay.
And it ends up getting caught under the keys, and I've seen pads get torn with them, and I think they do more damage than good. You're better off just putting a sticker where your fingers are supposed to go and kind of placing fingers there to get comfortable and find the right spot. Everybody, my beginner flutes are no better than yours. We just take it slow, and we use a mirror, and we don't get frustrated, and we don't create tension anywhere. That's how I think it worked.
Well, Jen, this was a really comprehensive, first few lessons here.
Thanks. So I know I went a little beyond.
No, I think it's really good. I think the flute, more so than any other wind instrument, is kind of mysterious to a lot of directors. Yeah. I know for a long time it was to me too. Mm-hmm. So I think this is really, really important. You've touched on a lot of great information and, kind of tips and tricks, things to look out for when you've got kids who aren't quite getting it. Right. And that's really good.
Good. Thanks. Yeah. Cause it's not going to be that natural for everybody. Yeah. It's just not, but it needs to feel that way. So when they finally get there. So yeah.
If our listeners want to reach out to you with questions or fight you, come at you, how can they get in touch?
My email is jenwisemusic@gmail.com. It's one N in Jen. I have the same handle on Facebook and Instagram. Nice. You can find me there. And, I want to hear your tips and tricks, because I know there's a lot out there. Mine are pretty basic, but they reach pretty far. So yeah. Thanks, Erik. This was good. I'm glad we could have a little flute moment on Take a Cue. So.
Absolutely. I'm going to be, like you said on the saxophone episode, my flutes aren't going to know what hit them. when we come back.
Oh, there you go. I like it.
No, it'll be good. Even for middle schoolers who've been playing for a few years, it's good to sort of take a step back and maybe even do a beginner lesson and say, let's pretend that we haven't played flute before. Let's try making our embouchure. And, they may realize that they've been making some really weird things happen to get their sound out.
Yeah.
Over the years.
Totally.
So if our listeners are interested in getting, getting more Take a Cue, make sure that you subscribe and, rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app. Go check us out on YouTube. You can see all the instrument demonstrations here from Jen. And, if you really liked us, don't forget that you can sign up to become a monthly supporter on our Spotify for Podcasters site. The link is in our show notes. It was a really good one, Jen.
Thank you. Thanks, Erik. And more to come from the Woodwind family.
Yes.
So, yes. All right.
Well, let's get out there and make some great flute music.